Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&A, so let's go ahead and knock this out. Alright, first question. Jason, you've stated in previous videos what your strength standards are for the big 5 lifts for advanced lifters. What would you consider to be intermediate strength standards where the average person thinks you look like you lift for those 5 key lifts? Thanks. I don't know, I really think if you want everyone to really think you look like you lift, you probably need to hit the advanced standards. But otherwise, I mean, you would just use my normal intermediate standards. What I tell you, get to a 225 bench, 315 squat, 405 deadlift, hopefully for reps. I mean, you could extrapolate those to other lifts. Maybe, I don't know, 155 press, right? 155 press. Maybe a 70 pound, 75 pound weighted pull up or chin up. You know, that's what you need to do for that. But what people need to understand is that what makes the average person walking down the street think you look like you lift is not going to make a single person on the internet think you look like you lift. So my other standards are for you to be big enough that everyone other than the morons on the internet, in other words, for a natural lifter or a very conservative gear user, you got to remember though, on the internet, at this point, basically, no one on less than a gram of gear a week even looks like they lift. You know, realistically speaking, I mean, a perfect example, there are people who come to my channel and say, Jason, you don't look like you lift. Do you even lift? You look like you've never touched a weight. And I've got DEXA scans showing that my fat-free mass index is over 26. Like, drug-free people don't really hit those numbers in terms of muscle mass, right? They don't. That's the idea that is very rare unless you're very fat. And I mean, yeah, a few can do it at my body fat, but they're the exception, not the norm. So, you know, internet standards are completely ridiculous, But real life standards, you know, if you've put on 10 pounds of muscle and you're decently lean, you're under about 17 or 18% body fat, you're going to look like you look to the average person walking down the street. I mean, look how many people thought Brad Pitt was jacked in Fight Club. He weighed about 155 pounds. So, perspective. All right, next question. Coach, I have made 0 progress on my pressing lifts on madcows 5x5, while my squat, deadlift, and row have soared with no end in sight. 5 rep max on squat has gone from 280 to 325. Deadlift 335 to 385. Barbell row 185 to 215 in less than 10 weeks. Bench has stayed at 215 times 5. Overhead press at 140 times 5. Body weight has gone up from 182 to 188. And I've added in dumbbell shoulder press on Monday, incline bench on Wednesday, both for 3x5. I've modified the program except for adding these extra pressing movements because the volume seems so low on bench and overhead press. Should I just use extra lifts and just stick with the program as is? Seems like there's only 2 working sets per workout for the pressing movements, and it feels like it's too little. But clearly the program works so long as I don't modify it, I suppose. Thanks. All right, let's be honest. You're still weak, right? You're still building a base. You are an intermediate. You're trying to get towards being an advanced lifter. You have almost no volume on the bench and the overhead press. That is one of the complaints of madcows. I do think it's a valid criticism of it. So why in the world would you add these other silly ass movements? If you know the training volume is too low on the 2 basic exercises, you're not improving. All right, I'm gonna be a little bit of a dick here. And what delusional world do you think adding some dumbbell work is going to be the key to improving those big lifts? I mean, you got to quit listening to these silly ass bodybuilding bros. You really and truly have to. You have to. They're going to lead you to sheer stupidity. I mean, they really will. They'll make you borderline mentally handicapped if you listen to them. If you want your bench press to go up, you should probably do more benching. Damn, right guys, right? If you want your overhead press to go up, you should probably do some more overhead pressing, unless you know your volume is sufficient on both. Now, you know you ate enough, you gained weight, and the other lifts went up, so you know you gained muscle. The pressing volume's too low on the big lifts that you need. Add more volume, right? Add more. Add a little back off work. You know, the end of the workout, after everything is done, come back and do a little bit more pressing, right? Of the big lifts or close enough variations to get away with it. This dumbbell stuff isn't helping you. That's stuff you add for extra volume on a specialized program for weak points when you're already kind of maximizing your volume on your big lifts, right? And you're trying to just prevent injuries and things like that and hypertrophy those muscles more. Add more volume on the lifts you want to bring up. All right, next question. How do inmates without weights get so jacked in prison with mainly calisthenics? I'm all for lifting. I'm just curious. There are some pretty fit men in prison. I'm currently reading a book called Convict Conditioning, and it preaches old school calisthenics, i.e. push-ups, leg raises, body bridges, squat, pull-up, handstand, push-ups. Please answer, interested in your opinion, coach. Well, you can do enough volume on those things. You'll get there, you know. Here's my point with that. Number one, as the other guy put down below, steroids are readily available in prison. Also, the average inmate isn't jacked. All right, you go look at the general prison population. Do you honestly think 50% of the guys who are in prison right now look like they are incredibly jacked? Or is it like 10% of them? Right? Like 10% of them. Maybe the 10% with good genetics, access to drugs. Because you know what? Steroids do get smuggled into prison. So there's that to consider. And because some guys have managed to do enough calisthenics to get jacked, doesn't mean that that's the most effective means available to do so. And I'm not against calisthenics by any stretch of the imagination. I think weighted body weight exercises rank among some of the best possible exercises you could be doing. Right? Any exercise that moves your body through space is a phenomenal movement pattern. But you can just have another inmate hop on your back. Or, you know, Cali Muscle and them used to play hide the pickle. But that aside, you need to factor in that because guys have managed to do it and found creative ways to do that, and it doesn't mean that that's the best way for you to do it. I'm going to recommend you get under a heavy barbell. And I'm going to recommend that when you're doing your calisthenics exercises, your body weight exercises, you program them and add weight by adding plates and chains and whatever you need to add, just like you would any other exercise. That's your most efficient and effective way to get there. These are guys who are doing the best they can with lack of equipment, and some of them who work hard enough and are genetically blessed enough get amazing results. But those same people, if they had access to a squat rack and a barbell and plates and chains to hang off with for all those dips and pull-ups and everything they do, they would probably be even more jacked, right? All right, next question. Hi, Jason. Why does it seem that every single powerlifter I see in their training using knee sleeves when it has been proven they damage your knees over time? I don't know what you're talking about. I know tons of powerlifters who don't own a set of knee sleeves. I've trained with tons of guys. I've trained with a lot of powerlifters who don't own a set of knee sleeves. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you're talking about powerlifters who are allowed to use knee sleeves in their federation and still be considered raw. Like the IPF allows that. Not all powerlifting federations allow raw to wear knee sleeves, right? So what I'm going to recommend to you is that if your fed doesn't allow it, you probably don't want to train with them because they add poundages. They add poundages. It lets you lift a heavier weight, and it could make you weaker at the bottom of your squat to train with them if you're not allowed to use them, if you do it all the time. And sleeves have not been proven to damage your knees. It's wraps, right? There is data out there that suggests, and that's pretty good data too, that knee wraps damage your knees over time. A wrap is not a sleeve. Now, what they'll try to claim is that, well, the sleeve helps keep your knee warm and prevent injury, you know, and all this other, this silly horse shit, as if their body isn't body temperature, you know, or as if there's any reason at all to think that trapping heat inside of a joint by wrapping it with something reduces injury rates. Again, citation needed. But there is data showing that the wraps will damage your knees. So I recommend that you don't use knee wraps unless you're going to compete in knee wraps. And I would say you have the option of not doing it. Most feds that allow knee wraps also have a no wraps division, so you can just not do that. But I do think you're confusing sleeves and wraps, and I know plenty of powerlifters who don't own either of them. So I'm not sure what you mean by all of them. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.